Knowing and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 19. When will these guys grow more eyes? After a bump, Logan steadied himself, turned his head to look angrily at the van that was constantly moving away, and cursed angrily. Logan, they are artificial intelligence, no consciousness. At the same time, the carriage was also affected by the truck, rushed straight into the green space on the other side, and finally stopped after a sharp brake. But the gate of the carriage loosened because of this bump, and one by one the frightened foals rushed directly off the car and neighed and rushed to the road. The farmer noticed the abnormality and hurriedly pushed the door and got out of the car, and the rest of the people in the car also got out of the car. It's just that the frightened foal is scurrying around, and there is no way to control it all. We need to help them. Professor Charles looked at the chaotic scene and frowned and worried. No. We have to hurry, someone will come to help. Logan only glanced at it, then withdrew his gaze and motioned for Chen Tian to continue on his way. Isn't that us? The words fell. Professor Charles closed his eyes slightly, releasing his psychic ability to calm the frightened foals. Under his comfort, the foals settled down at great speed, but even if they just stood on the road, they would affect the passing vehicles. Seeing this, Chen Tian and Logan were quite helpless, so they had to listen to the professors getting out of the car to bring back the frightened foal. With the help of the two, the foals soon returned to the carriage. Thank you so much. The farmer wiped a handful of cold sweat on his forehead, thanked Chen Tian and the two, and warmly invited, I don't know how to express my gratitude, can I invite you to dinner? Quote. Logan looked at the smile on the other person's face, a little overwhelmed and hesitated in place. Okay. Chen Tian on the side agreed for him. After all, after driving for so long, he really needed to find a place to rest. Moreover, you can also find an opportunity to go to DC Gotham. Uncle Wolf saw that Chen Tian had agreed, plus the professor also wanted to have dinner together, so he had to nod and agree. Chapter 24, X-24. Night raid at the Genetic Institute. Night is falling, and the moonless firmament is full of stars. Chen Tian and his party followed the farmer to the latter's residence, whose name was Will, and his ancestors all ran farms in the south. Not long ago, he had built a classic southern double-story building in the middle of a cornfield. Due to its location in the middle of a cornfield, the surroundings are immersed in silence. The Vile family was welcoming and quickly prepared dinner. Under the orange light, the food on the table is dyed with a warm color. For the first time with so many people, Laura, who was eating around the table, had no scruples and directly reached out to grab the food in front of her. With this, Chen Tian smiled wordlessly, pulled back Laura's hand, and stuffed a fork into it. Quote. Laura gave him a displeased look and continued to look down and eat. Professor Charles next to him had a good conversation with the farmer, and Logan also joked about the previous events at Xavier Genius Academy in a rare relaxed atmosphere. Chen Tian stopped talking, thinking about the matter of DC Gotham Shore. End of dinner. It was also approaching midnight. The farmer's family, seeing that it was late at night, enthusiastically opened their mouths to stay overnight. Logan was about to say no, considering that there were pursuers, but heard the angry scolding of the farmer's son Nate. Oh my god, damn it, it's starting again. Everyone looks for prestige. I saw Nate angrily smash a punch, unscrewing the valve, but there was no moving faucet. Logan and several people were confused by his performance, but when they looked back, they found that Will, who had always been enthusiastic, had an unexpectedly gloomy expression on his face at this time. Fuck, it must be the guys raised by the bitch, who have moved on the water supply pump again. Will cursed, his brow furrowed deeply. Someone did something? Professor Charles wondered. Laura didn't pay much attention and sat down in her chair a little sleepily. Chen Tian knew the reason. All the surrounding land has been acquired by the Canwood Beverage Company, except for the Will family, who stick to their ancestral land and refuse to make the slightest concession. So they've spent almost all of their recent days tormented by Wood's Beverage Company. Breaking the pump and cutting off the water supply is just one of the means of torture. No. I have to deal with it, there are guests, you can't even have water for bathing. Will took a deep breath, stood up and walked out the door. I'll go with you, maybe I can take the handle. Rogan felt that Will was warm and that he had to help and chose to follow. I stayed to take care of the doctor and Laura. Chen Tian considered that the people from the Transgenic Research Institute were very likely to come to the door, and did not choose to go together. Rogan knew Chen Tian's thoughts, didn't say much, just turned around and instructed, and went out with Will. The three Chen Tian who remained were arranged by the farmer's hostess Catherine to the guest room upstairs. Time passes slowly. Due to the almost non-stop rush for several days, before Logan and the farmer could deal with the water supply problem, the tired Professor Charles and Laura soon fell asleep in bed. Sorry, please forgive me. Professor Charles, who was sleeping, seemed to dream of the past, and muttered some apologetic words in his mouth. It was not loud, but it woke up Laura, who was lying on the small bed next to her. She quickly opened her eyes, her body instinctively tensed, looked at the surrounding environment, not the cold white room, and quickly relaxed. Then his gaze inadvertently fell on Chen Tian. Chen Tian did not sleep and sat by the window, looking at the scene outside the window with a slightly solemn expression. He knew that people from the GMO Institute would most likely come to him, so he needed to be vigilant to avoid the tragedy of Professor Charles's brutal murder. Sensing Laura's doubtful gaze, Chen Tian looked back, pulled the corners of his mouth, just wanted to smile, and the next moment, his expression froze. There were heavy footsteps outside the door. Chen Tian's 5 senses were beyond ordinary people, and he could hear that the other party was deliberately controlling his steps, and besides, the farmer and Logan who drove away had not yet returned. Seemingly bad comers. Snap. The door was pushed open. Laura looked at the person standing in the doorway, and her little head was stunned. Because the person standing at the door is no different from Rogan in terms of body shape and appearance and temperament, but he looks relatively young. Laura's slightly narrowed eyes revealed doubt, and she smelled a strange breath. Then, Chen Tian got up and walked out to block in front of Professor Charles, staring at him with a solemn face. The guy who looked exactly the same as the young wolf uncle in front of him was not Uncle Wolf. It's a clone of Uncle Wolf. X-24 has all the mutant abilities of Uncle Wolf. In the movie, it was also because of the other party's very confusing appearance that he easily approached Professor Charles and then killed the other party. Bang! The moment X-24 saw Chen Tian get up, his cold eyes flashed with dark light, and his feet suddenly stepped on the ground, like a bloodthirsty lone wolf turning into an afterimage. Wrapped in a strong wind, he swooped towards the yellow-skinned boy. Meanwhile, outside the farm, it was covered in thick night, and there were many cars parked on the path, all bearing the logo of the Genetic Institute. In the center of the convoy, in a special jeep, the newly appointed head of security at the institute was staring at the room where Chen Tian and the others were. There was a hint of worry in his eyes, not that the X-24 mission would fail, but that the other party would lose control. After all, if they want to euthanize the subjects, there is basically only one reason, that is, the subjects have an autonomous consciousness and thus disobey their orders. The X-24 won't lose control, will it? First chapter, previous chapter.